The next day, John was there again with two of his disciples. When he saw Jesus passing by, he said, "Look, the Lamb of God." When the two disciples heard him say this, they followed Jesus. Turning around, Jesus saw them following and asked, "What do you want?" They said, "Rabbi, where are you staying?" "Come," he replied, "and you will see." So they went and saw where he was staying, and they spent that day with him. Over the past 2 to 3 years, I have found my head turned and my heart caught by the transformative glimpse of God I have experienced through Christian community. Like the two disciples, I have felt this glimpse feed a deeper curiosity, prompting me to follow and ultimately be invited to come and see. To this end, this 2023, I am embarking on a 6-month journey to dwell with various Christian communities. On the way, I'll be sharing interviews with community members, founders, and leaders to learn more about the blessings, challenges, and wisdom these dwelling places of God hold. In doing so, I hope to inform how it is we might nurture people and communities to be transformative manifestations of God, offering a glimpse of the divine and inviting people to come and see God's loving dwelling place.
Well, my name is Carol Ann Gieske, but that's a hard name to say, so just Carol Ann. And I'm a member of Madonna House Apostolate, which has headquarters in Madonna in Combermere, Ontario, Canada. But I'm here in our Robin Hood's Bay, England, Madonna House, which we've been here 38 years. I haven't been here 38 years. I've only been here almost 1 year now. But the house, the apostolate, has been here that long. So, yes, I'm a member of Madonna House, and I have been a member for, well, it's the same length of time as there's been a house here. I made my very first promises the same year, 1985. So, yeah, I can always remember how long the apostolate is here and how long I'm in the apostolate. So that's who I am. I was born and raised in Minnesota in the USA. So I am first of an American, and now I've been in Canada most of the last 38 years. So I have dual citizenship, which is fairly common for those of us that are born in the U.S. If we've been long-term members of the apostolate, we often have dual citizenship. Yeah.
And for people who aren't familiar with the word apostolate, how would you define it?
Oh, that's true. That's kind of maybe an old-fashioned word. Well, it simply means the gospel work that God has given us to do. It is, an apostolate is, I suppose, a specific service or work or organization in the church. Yeah. So we're like a Roman Catholic community. Actually, technically, we're called an ecclesial. We're one of the new ecclesial communities, of which like Focolare is one, and the Beatitudes, Emmanuel Community, some of those that you may have heard of. Madonna House is actually one of the older ones of these because we started in 1947, but in Canada, so it wasn't as known over here. Yeah.
And can you describe what the Madonna House community is? I mean, that's a big question, but maybe in terms of who forms the membership, maybe more on the house in Combermere.
Okay. Well, yeah. Just, I think I need to tell you probably a little bit about the woman, the foundress who started it, because it's kind of an unusual beginning, I suppose. Catherine DeHuick Doherty, or she's known as Catherine Doherty, was from Russia. She was born and raised in Russia, but her father was in the diplomatic corps, so they moved around a bit. She went to school in Egypt, and she went to school in Paris. And so anyway, but she is from the era of before the Communist Revolution and World War I. So she was married shortly before the war and before the revolution. So she and her husband both served in the army, or in the military there. But when the revolution came, because her family was part of the minor nobility, they were considered enemies. So many of her relatives were killed. And she and her husband fled to Finland, where they had a cottage there. And they thought they would be safe. But in fact, that particular village had been, the villagers had become communist. And so they were imprisoned in their own little cottage and put to starve to death. So, they didn't quite starve to death, but they came pretty close. The Russian White Army, it was called, but they were the people that were the non-communists, freed the village and rescued them before they died. But while Catherine was laying there, she promised God that, she said, if I come out of this alive, I will dedicate my life to you. Now, she had already been raised in a very religious family. Her parents were both very religious. They were Russian Orthodox, although she had some Polish Catholic, probably Eastern Rite. She had an Eastern Rite grandma. So anyway, so that's her background. So when they escaped the revolution, they came to England, and she became a Roman Catholic while she was there. So I give you that background because they eventually came to Canada, to Toronto, and that would have been in 1920, 21. And her husband had been gassed during the war, so he never was very well. So she was working, and she was pregnant when they came over. They had a baby, a son. And so here they were. Now they were penniless. They were not used to being really poor, but they were poor now. And so she took some jobs as whatever she could. But she also began helping the Russian immigrants because people were fleeing from Russia. And so she was helping them get started in life too in Toronto. So it was quite the time. But then she was discovered she was working, this is an interesting story, but I go on too much. But anyway, yeah, she was working at a jewelry counter in one of the big stores in Toronto. And somehow some lady got to talking to her and realized she was from Russia. And Catherine was always a great storyteller. And so she was telling about the horrors of communism and things that happened. And the lady was fascinated. And she asked her to come and give a talk at their women's group. And that was sort of the beginning of Catherine's whole new career as a speaker. So she could hold an audience, no problem. And she got herself the dress of, the minor nobility gala, and began giving talks. And so, she became wealthy again eventually. But throughout this, every now and then the Lord would kind of remind her, of her promise. And every time she opened the Bible, it would be at that passage where Jesus is saying to the rich young man, "Go sell all you possess and give to the poor and come follow me." She'd go to a hotel and open their Bible that they had in the, or the motels have Bibles, or anywhere she'd open a Bible, it was always open to the same thing. And so eventually she said, "Okay, Lord, what am I to do?" But she had this vision to to help the poor by just living among them. And she thought that, okay, God is saying, go sell what you possess, give to the poor, and come follow me. So she was going to do it literally. It was the 1930s now, and the Depression was on, and there was plenty of poor people around. And not only that, the communists were making big inroads in Toronto because the people were poor and they were immigrants, and the churches weren't helping them enough. They were maybe doing something, but they weren't. The communists were promising food and shelter and help, and they were very dedicated, those communists, because, well, the initial communism sounds pretty good, help for every equality of the poor, taking care of each other, and the people, they were dedicated, and they would fast or whatever, for their cause. And Catherine was seeing this, and when she went to the bishop, now that was the other thing. This is kind of, her father had taught her that the bishop is the father of your soul. So we each Catholic can say the bishop is the father of my soul, because he is, he is the descendant of the apostles, and so he's really in charge of the flock, right? So, but anyway, so she went to talk to the bishop about this idea she had about selling everything she had and going to the poor and serving the poor. But she had a son who was now about 8 or 9 years old, and her husband was another whole story that she never really talked about very much, but he was not faithful to her really, so they were separated much of the time. Anyway, so the bishop said, well, she had talked about her idea with various priests, and they all said, you have a son, your job is to take care of your son, period. Forget this other idea. Well, the bishop listened to her, and he asked her to wait and pray about it for 1 year, and then come back and talk to him. So she did, and then he gave her permission, provided she would provide, for George, her son. And so she went to some Portland Street in Toronto and opened she took a room. She thought it was going to just be herself. She'd pray in the morning and then go around in the afternoon and beg for food and things from the grocery stores and give to the people around her that she knew needed it. Well, about 5 or 6 young people came to join her, and she said she hadn't imagined that it would be an apostolate. Yeah. I guess it's probably called a work, that would involve other people. Yeah. And so she went to the bishop and she said, well, what am I supposed to do with these people? And she said, you have to take them. And you have to have them work with you, and so it was a whole new thing. So what they started then was called Friendship House, and they had a clothing room, and they had a soup kitchen, and they had a boys' club and a girls' club, and things were hopping. And she always begged, even like she begged for food for herself and for everybody else, and so she begged for everything, so furniture, books, clothes, whatever. Yeah. And, well, people do like to help, so things would come in. And so really from the very beginning, which her work began with Friendship House then in the 30s and 40s, and then so eventually when Madonna House in Combermere, Ontario started in 1947, begging has always been our way of life, because people say, well, how do you live? Some religious communities, they work outside jobs or whatever their charism is, or maybe they're a teaching order or a nursing order or something. Well, we've never worked for salary. We've always lived by providence of God. And so people do send stuff, A grocery here in Robin Hood's Bay. We do send an annual letter to all of our friends and people who have supported us or who we think are interested in what we're doing. And people do support us.
And from my understanding, Madonna House is a community of lay men and women and priests who take vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience.
Yes.
And the main community is in Combermere, Canada.
Yes.
And there are about 200 members.
Yes. Yeah.
And then, whilst the main community is in Combermere, Canada, there are various, would you call them mission houses? Or
we say mission houses or field houses.
Field houses across the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So would you be able to add to that, maybe describe a bit more about because I know there's quite a long process before taking those vows, so maybe describing the process of how people become part of the community, and then maybe we can explore the different mission houses and what they do.
Okay. All right. Those are good questions. So, well, people do come as visitors or volunteers to the main house in Combermere, Ontario. They often hear about us by word of mouth. Usually it's by word of mouth. They know somebody who has been, or another way that they do hear about Madonna House is through Catherine's writings. She has many books actually that are in print.
I noticed in the living room.
Yes, but of course now another good way is through the internet. There is a website. Just put in Madonna House and the website will come up, and there is quite a bit. You can have a tour of the property, but also more importantly, find out a good bit about our life and what it's like and all of that. So when somebody hears about Madonna House, often it is someone who is kind of searching for, where does God want me to be? What is my vocation? I've just gotten renewed in my faith, and now I don't know. I feel some kind of calling. I don't know what I should do or where. So Madonna House is a great place to come and spend a week or a month or up to a year just living in a Catholic Christian community and learning more about your faith, because we have informal classes, but they're solid teachings, and just the experience too of living as a Catholic family. Because Madonna House, yes, we are laymen, laywomen, and priests who are members, and but we live as a family. We often say as like the family of Nazareth. So our lifestyle is fairly simple. But the guests come and they join with us in our work, in our prayer, in our recreation, in our quiet time. It is out in the country, so there's hikes and there's skiing and ice skating in the winter, and swimming in the beautiful Madawaska River in the summer. And it is. And we have a farm. We have which the farm feeds the family, really. We can be anywhere from about 120 members plus 20, 30 guests at any given time throughout the year. So, of course, that takes a good bit of food. So we have cows and sheep and chickens, and we have vegetable gardens. And people help on the farm. If you're a guest, you will probably have an opportunity for going to the farm part of the time, or you might be working in the laundry, or you might be doing what we call shipping and receiving, because we do live by begging, and so things come, and so somebody has to help unpack them and all of that. We have a clothing sorting every now and then, which is always a fun day, and it's amazing. But anyhow, so say you're a guest and you come, and now you've been there 6 months, and the Lord is doing something in your heart. Also, we say it is the house of Our Lady. We say Mary brings people to Madonna House. And so one day, like with me, I woke up one morning and I said, oh, I think this is my vocation. So people have different stories about how it happens. And then you ask to become what we call an applicant. So if you're accepted, by this time, if you've been there 6 months, you've been talking to one of the priests for spiritual direction, And, well, you talk to some of the older staff, and we live in dormitories, you should know that, so nobody has their own private room except some of the older people that need it. So you have a house mother or house father, and so you have mentors to talk to.
Yeah.
So okay, so now you've been accepted. So now you begin a period of training. It's 21 months currently. Sometimes it's been 2 years, but right now you start on September 8th and go for until June 8th of the second year. And during that time, well, you will experience working in various departments of Madonna House, maybe the laundry or the farm, the gardens, the different things I've mentioned. We have a gift shop, you might help out there. Usually people work in one place for 4 months and then they get switched, so they have different experiences. Yeah. And also then we have classes on the sacraments, we have classes on church history. Those are for all the guests, including the applicants, and then the applicants have their own classes on the history of our apostolate, we call it apostolate, and also on our own charism, our spirituality. Yeah. Our spirituality is simple. It can be all written out on one little 3x5 card. It's called the Little Mandate. And these were words that were spoken in Catherine Doherty's heart, not all at once, but over the years. And it starts with arise, go, sell all you possess, give it directly, personally to the poor. And it ends with, fast, pray always, and then be hidden, be a light to your neighbor's feet. And the last line is, pray always, I will be with you. So that's Jesus saying, I will be with you. So, yeah, that's our little mandate, and that is what we all live by. So then, okay, so now you've come through your applicancy, you're ready to make a commitment for 1 year. So you make promises in front of the whole community of poverty, chastity, and obedience for 1 year. And we call it promises because we are a lay community. We don't have the canonical status that would make it vows. Yeah. But in how you live it, it's the same. Yeah. So that's for 1 year. And you may be asked to stay in Cumbermere for that year, or you may be sent out to a mission house. It all depends on the individual person, on the needs of the community. We like to say few rules, much love. Sometimes when you're in Cumbermere, it might feel like rules because, you're dealing with 150 people.
That you were saying was like traffic control.
So it's a bit of traffic control there, but still, there isn't a set thing, like you will go out or you will do this for so long. No, it's very individual. Yeah.
And would you mind sharing a bit about the rhythms of prayer that the community share in?
Very good question. We do pray at least one of the offices of the church. What is it called? Office, the divine office. Every day. In Cumbermere, normally it's lauds or morning prayer. That would be at 8 o'clock in the morning. And then we have the Mass at 5:15 in the afternoon. That's most days except Saturdays and Sundays. Of course, the Mass is in the morning. We pray the Rosary together in community after supper. And this is the Madonna House in Cumbermere now. Most of the houses do pray the Rosary sometime, but we don't always get it prayed every day, every house. So let's see. What else? Okay, then after the noon meal, we would have spiritual reading. So there's always usually a reading and then time for questions and discussion. That's normally led by one of our priests. And that's true in all of our houses, I think. Pretty much we try to do that. Sometimes, like even here, we experience sometimes there's the guests that we have or the conversation that's going, we might not only have just a really short spiritual reading. But, we try to do that. So either lauds or vespers, and then mass and the rosary. So that's pretty much it. I should mention Postinia, though. After you've been a guest for a while and things have kind of settled down for you, if you feel drawn to make a Postinia, that can be arranged, because we have a number of cabins.
Would you mind describing what Postinia is for
people? Okay, good, yeah. So Postinia is a Russian word, means desert. So it means going aside for 24 hours to fast and pray. So the only book you take, unless you have special permission, is the Bible, and tea or coffee is in the room already, and you take some bread, unless you can't do bread, and then you take something else, and you go alone to fast and pray for 24 hours, and that's called making a Postinia. Now, Catherine would be quick to say, you can do Postinia of the heart. If you like, this would be more like in your own home so you've been a guest, it's enriched your life, but it's not your vocation. So now it's time for you to go home, go back to your job or university or high school, I shouldn't say high school, because you do have to be 19 in order to stay in Cumbermere. Once in a while an 18-year-old, but usually 19. So, Postinia of the heart. So Catherine always encouraged us, and this is so basic Christian life, really, to spend some time every day in quiet, to just pray, listen to the Lord. And that's challenging in our very busy world, and even more so now with we're also interconnected through the internet. But it is really, really essential, if we are serious about our life with God, to try to take a bit of time every day. And I say a bit of time, we'll start with 5 minutes, if you've never done it, or try 10. But pretty soon you'll find a half an hour is not too hard, because you get such peace from it, Yeah. And, things that you thought were insolvable problems start to kind of the knots start coming out. Do you have to be Catholic to go to Madonna House? Well, no, you don't have to be Catholic, but you do have to be willing to participate fully in our life, which means you must come to Mass and Vespers and everything, follow the regular schedule. Then the only other thing I should mention, I did mention our food is pretty basic. So, and also you have to be able to, you have to be in a somewhat physical condition to be able to, because it's pretty rustic. We have outdoor toilets and we have, you're living in a dormitory. We do have indoor toilets for during the night, but it's very rural. We're on a rural sewage system. Well, it's not even a sewage system. It's very septic tank, like country. So, So you have to be willing to not take a shower every day. You can wash up, but we don't shower every day just because the water system wouldn't be able to handle that many people. Yeah. And it's also identifying with the poor. In North America, we get so used, or Europe too, I think, get so used to showering every day, or often anyway. But most of the world doesn't have that privilege. Yeah.
I'm aware that
Go ahead.
we've got a group coming soon. More about the mission houses. So Cumbermere, you've got about 200 people-ish living together. Yeah. Here in Robin Hood's Bay, there are four of
us.
2 laywomen, layman, and a priest.
Mm-hmm.
And here in Robin Hood's Bay, it's kind of a mission of hospitality, isn't it? And of welcome.
Yeah.
is it also kind of similar sized in the other mission houses, and do they have different charisms, as it were?
Good question. Okay, so the basic spirituality is the same, but the works can be varied, because Catherine said nothing is foreign to the apostolate except sin. So, for example, one of our, I think, is the largest house we have in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. For many years was a soup kitchen and served the people on the streets. Now it's more of a hospitality center. The people on the streets come, but it isn't just for a meal. They come for coffee and a snack, and for the morning maybe, and play cards, and so it's become. The reason we changed was mostly because there are several other soup kitchens right in the area, and we were no longer needed that way. So we do have, I think, about 10 members there. 3 or 4 of them are quite elderly, but the facility is such that works. And we don't really ever retire, so you do whatever you can do. So that's our largest house. Now we have several of our houses maybe have 2 or 3 people, and they're more of a prayer, what we just say a prayer house. They have facilities for people to come and make a private day of retreat, and they do a lot of listening. And they don't have people come and stay and live with them and work with them for a week or something. We do have, I'd have to stop and think, but so we have about 6 houses in Canada and 5 in the U.S., 1 in Russia, 1 which is closed right now because of the war, 1 in Belgium, the one here in England, 1 in the West Indies, and 1 in Salem, Missouri. Well, no, I already said in the U.S. So, but I mentioned the one in Salem because they are able to take guests for a week or a month, and although there's only 4 members living there, it is set up to be able to. It operates like Humbermere basically, on a much smaller scale, but. Yeah. And that's really, I guess, our only, like the house here in Robin Hood's Bay, we are able also to take guests for up to a week perhaps, who want to live with us and experience our community. But we also have our prayer cabins get used more, I guess, by people who want to come for a day or 2 days of retreat. So that's a bit of both. But we are interested in having people come to live with us and experience our life. We very much are interested in that. When God brings them, we're happy to receive them.
I'm very happy to be here. Very happy to be here. And then, practically speaking, so financially the community relies on donations and providence. And as individuals, you were mentioning that when you join the community, you can keep what you have financially, but there's a certain level of accountability in terms of how you spend. Is that right?
Yeah, that's true. We say you have an inheritance or you have money or whatever. It remains in your name, but you need permission to spend it. And so it's a way of protecting your poverty, your promise of poverty. We are encouraged to dispossess of things that we don't need, like with clothing or jewelry or whatever. Nobody says you have to get rid of all of it right now. But if you're really taking a vow of poverty, you want to simplify your life, and so you kind of begin that process of letting go of some things. When people come as guests, and we have to tell people this, or even if they're thinking of becoming an applicant, we say, no, don't sell your car right now. Don't get rid of everything you own. Come and see first. Come and see whether this is really your vocation. So So, but otherwise, and then when guests come. People say, well, how much do you charge? But we don't charge. People can give a donation, but you don't have to. So it's open that way.
And I think our guests are here. I want one clarifying question is, in terms of the promise of obedience, there you have directors who allocate which house you're going to, and you don't know how long you're going.
That's true. Yeah. So yes, the directors of each of there's a director for the laymen, a separate one for the priests, and a separate one for the women. So those particular ones would be mostly responsible for where people are assigned, whether it's a department in Madonna House in Combermere, or whether it's out into a mission house. So yeah, we were asked to go. Now, they do take into consideration, who the person is, what the needs of the mission is. It's not just a blind go, But for the most, unless there's a really good, strong reason why you can't accept, or you can talk about it. You can talk it over. But otherwise, obedience, and sometimes, well, it's true too when you're living in community, and anybody who's been in a family, this, personalities are different. Yeah. And maybe, somebody is in charge, like for example here, Jeanne is in charge, and she might decide, after talking things over, she'll make a decision maybe about something. And it might not be exactly the way I would have done it or would even like to do it, but she has what we call the grace of state to do that. So we're not a so-called democracy where you vote and the majority rules. We are more, we do have leadership and authority. Yeah.
But kind of positive leadership and also listening and of taking
it's not
into account. Well, I think I should probably let you go.
I hear the doorbell ringing,
Thank you so much, Caroline. And I think we've got a good overview of the Madonna House in the minutes that we've had, so thank you.
Well, I'm glad that you asked me, and it was a joy to do it.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.